Too. It's sweaty out here.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. This is Nick, KN6DAL, and welcome to the 2 Meter Crew Anti-Net at our new time at 8 p.m. You guys started off great. I love it.
What a comment, Greg.
Yeah, that was awesome. First and foremost, I want to take a moment to thank the owners and supporters of the W6VVR repeater and the Vaca Valley Radio Club. Also, the Freestar Network for the use of their repeaters and digital connections. And a big thanks to Mike, WG5EEK, and Greg, KN6KIE, for their continued networking efforts to keep everybody connected. You'll probably notice that we have a couple less links than we did in the past, and we're doing that to try to consolidate a little bit and just keep the connections as clean as possible. We seem to have worked out through some of the audio issues, and hopefully it sounds good tonight.
Gotta remember who we're connected to.
And before we get going too far into it, we want to just take a moment and find out if there's any priority traffic. If there is, we will always clear the frequency. Just say break, break with your call sign. If there's any priority traffic or emergency traffic at this time, please come now. All right, nothing being heard. The 2 Meter Crew is not an actual club. We're just a group of ham enthusiasts that are learning and enjoying all things ham related. There are no dues or fees to be a 2 Meter Crew member. For more information, you can visit our Facebook site at 2MC or join our Discord group, which is which is posted in the link of the YouTube channel. And the net is open for everybody, so if you feel the urge to jump in and say hi, or you have any questions that aren't related to the topic, you're always welcome to come in and say hi. All right, the 2 Meter Crew Anti-Net meets every Wednesday at 8 p.m., which is 3 a.m. UTC on the W6VVR repeater. The repeater frequency is 145.470 with a negative offset of 600 kilohertz and a PL tone of 127.3. You can also access us through Echolink at W6VVR-R. All-Star through node 51094 or 512342. DMR talk group 3174117, YSF reflector 50462, and through Freestar, their All-Star links are 2195 and 53375. And the Anti-Net's also being live streamed right here at the Northwest Ham Shack. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to get notifications on future Anti-Nets or any other videos that pop up there. Before we get started into the topic, I want to take just a quick second and check in with anybody out there that may be new to us, or if they're new to ham radio, if you just got your license, just upgraded, or maybe have just never checked into the Anti-Net before. Come on in now and say hi.
KE6 KCM, John, Mobile, in Vacaville.
Hey, John, thanks for coming in. You sound great over the repeater tonight. Are you just heading home from work or heading out, or what's your plan?
Just heading down to work. Work down in the Bay Area, so I commute down from Folsom.
Well, that's a heck of a drive. Hopefully you can catch as much of this as you can before you have to start. But I appreciate you coming in tonight. This is Nick, KN6DAL. Any other stations want to check in and say hi or new to ham radio? All right, nothing being heard. We're going to move on to tonight's topic. As a lot of you know, we switched gears a little bit. We moved the Anti-Net to an hour later. A lot of that was to accommodate some scheduling issues as far as my work and other work related to people getting on, and hopefully to drive a little bit more traffic. We've also changed a couple of digital connections to try to make things a little bit cleaner. So we do ask that when you come in, try to just leave a little bit of a break to allow people an opportunity to come in between, just because some of the digital connections can take a minute to jump on. But with that being said, we wanted to jump right into the topic of evacuate now. So with summer kind of jumping into full swing, rising temperatures, wildfires starting up in the Northern California area, there's continued civil unrest and an ever-growing tension in our political system. There's many things that can cause you to need to have like an emergency plan in place to protect you and your family. And ham radio has always been sort of the cornerstone when it comes to communications in the event of natural and man-made disasters. And it's proven its utility over and over again. In addition to communication, we wanted to talk about what does your emergency plan look like, and what can you do now to ensure that you're better prepared moving forward should you need to make a fast and life-changing decision. All right, so I'm going to start with just kind of a short little story here. So you hear a loud knock on your door, and it's the fire department, and they say you have 2 minutes to leave your house. And in November of 2019, in an issue of Reader's Digest, several homeowners recounted hearing those very words during the devastation of the July 2018 fire that ravaged houses in the suburb of Redding, California, in which more than 38,000 people were forced to evacuate their homes. If you had only 2 minutes to leave your home and your property, what would you take with you? So obviously people are going to be first. Animals would come next. Your first concern is going to be the people in your household, and then your animals. Your animals can be domesticated pets, work animals, other sometimes livestock. Plan a way for people and animals to escape quickly, and take into account their ages and possible disabilities that you have in your household, and what it's going to take to get people out of your home fast in the event of an emergency. And try to just consider, if people need extra assistance, what that's going to take. We're going to go into some other things, but I'm just going to touch on this real quick. Another thing you're going to want to consider is grab and go bags. Those are essential. I'm going to have Jim unpack that here in just a minute. Another thing you want to consider is maintaining communication methods. How are you going to communicate with people? One thing to consider is that your smartphone always is going to go with you without saying. It's going to be kind of your primary support system of communicating with loved ones. But understand that in a widespread disaster, oftentimes that's going to eliminate substantial amounts of the power grid, which we've seen in different parts of the country eliminate the ability for smartphones to pick up cell service through cell towers. And so that can render those relatively useless. So another consideration would be what's your plan to keep in communication with your family. And if you've already stashed that grab and go bag away, that's one less thing that you have to think about taking with you. Other important things you want to think about are keys to your house and to vehicles, warm clothing, any kind of laptops, cash, credit cards, other forms of payment. If you have time for different luxury items for your kids, like toys and stuff, you might consider that. And then anything that's sentimental to you. Now realize that first conversation that we started, you'll probably have a lot more time than 2 minutes to evacuate a home. I'm going to let this drop because I lost it probably halfway through, didn't I? This is Nick, KN60AL. Realistically, you're going to have a lot more than 2 minutes usually to plan an evacuation. In a widespread disaster such as the California wildfires that were just mentioned, you'll most likely have known about them, and you'll know that things are kind of moving towards your general area, and there will be warnings before you're required to move out quickly. But if you haven't already collected the things that you need for an evacuation, this would be a good time to think about that and to maybe put a game plan together with your family. So with that, I'm going to let the repeater break and see if anybody wants to jump in and has any questions, and then we will move over to Jim. So I'm going to let this break and see if anybody has anything to add. This is Nick, KN6DAL. If you have anything, come on in now. All right, nothing being heard. We're going to pass it over to Jim, KJ6FMP. If you want to jump in and tell us a little bit about go bags.
Sure. So actually, I'm going to pull back from the go bags. We'll get to go bags, but Kilo Juliet 6 Foxtrot November Papa. What I want to share with you is a little bit of experience that I have. I work for UC Davis Medical Center. And as you may know, the camp fires were a big deal. We had 38 burn unit beds. We had 35 people filled up in those beds. So it was a big deal. But we're not just talking about fires in California. We know California is just going to burn up anyway. And it does that every 6 or 7 years. And then we have a variety of fires. But the western states also suffer from fires. There are other things that will force you or make you decide to evacuate. And so hurricanes are one of those things. Now, we don't have hurricanes on the Pacific coast. We have Pacific storms, which are pretty severe, but they're nothing like a hurricane. Eastern seaboard and the Gulf Coast area typically get hammered with hurricanes. Hurricane season starts around May, so we're well into the hurricane season. I don't know what letter they're up to, but they've already had a few big tropical depressions and tropical storms. Tsunamis are another thing. Those are typically West Coast types of things because they are triggered a lot of the times by earthquakes. So Alaska to Baja California, as well as worldwide, we know that Japan had the huge tsunami in 2010. Another thing is earthquakes. There is no warning for earthquakes. As much as the United States Geological Survey wants to believe that they have a great warning system, they don't. So the reality is you might have to evacuate for one of these types of reasons or something else, such as civil unrest, which you probably don't want to evacuate for, and chemical disasters, which you may or may not want to evacuate for. And I'm going to give a break for the repeater to drop here. So instead of talking about the specifics of the different types of emergencies that might make you evacuate, let's talk more about being prepared for that evacuation. Nick discussed about the knock on the door and having 2 days would be great. 2 hours left or 2 minutes left to bolt out of your house. Well, what do you do then? Well, there's an old saying. It's actually, and I work in disaster recovery and emergency preparedness at the hospital as well. So failing to plan is planning to fail. If you don't have a plan, well, I feel sorry for you, and you really need to have one. And it's fairly straightforward. You don't have to go crazy elaborate. You don't have to go doomsday prepper on it. Let's just be realistic about it. So let me give you some of the things that you need to have ready to go. In other words, it's sitting there. All you got to do is grab the bag or grab the thing and go. So ready to go means you don't have to think about it. Grab the bag. So copies of important papers. Some examples. Driver's license. I know that's usually in your pocket or your purse. The deed to your house might be important depending on the situation. Proof of insurance, medical records, passports, social security cards, and a list of personal contacts. Not an electronic list, a paper list. Think about that. When you are in scramble mode and you're evacuating, the paper list in your pocket or in your purse or in your go bag is the go-to thing. Don't depend on electronics that much as people love them. Safeguard your pets. Have a plan for how you're going to evacuate your pets with you if at all possible. Prepare your yard. That's primarily for fires and things like that. So, with the animals, I'm going to go back to the animals, microchips. Everybody thinks that the government's tracking your dog. They don't give a rat's patootie about your dog. I'm going to give the repeater a break. Another break. All right. So don't freak out about the chip in your dog, okay? It's cool. Just get your dog out of there. You don't want your dog to die. Know your utility shutoffs. If you have time prior to leaving your humble abode, turn off your gas, turn off your electricity. It's okay. It's not going to hurt anything. It's going to hurt something if it's on. So turn it off. If you don't know how to do it, you can go to your power company or your gas company, whoever supplies that to you. Or if you have a propane tank and you don't know how to turn it off, well, that's really bad. But make sure you know how to do that. Have the wrench. I have mine chained to my gas meter so it can't run away or walk away or get buried by some, project that I do in my side yard. Stockpile sandbag materials. What are we talking about here? Not for earthquakes, not for fires, but primarily for hurricanes and floods. So think about that. If you live in a flood zone, even if it's a 500-year flood zone, you better have sandbags because you don't know if you're on the 499th year and the 500th year comes and the flood comes. So be ready for that. Protect your windows, hurricanes primarily. So think about some of that stuff. That's really important. So now that you've thought about that, what is your plan exactly? Do you have copies of your important papers? Do you have a bag that you can grab and run out the door if you get that 2-minute knock that Nick talked about earlier? If you don't have a bag like that, I strongly urge you to go to Big Five or whatever sporting goods place you go. I'm not going to say order it on Amazon, but go to a local sporting goods place, get a bag, fill it up with all the stuff that you need. That doesn't mean 70 gallons of water. Realistically, that's not realistic. Okay? Clear your yard if you're in a fire zone. Stockpile certain materials. When you leave for an evacuation, do not, I strongly urge you to realize this reality. Do not count on the government for 1 week. I know everybody talks about 72-hour bag. You need to be thinking about 168 hours. That's 1 week if you haven't calculated it. So 24 times 7 equals 168. So these are the things you need to think about. Giving a break for the repeater because it needs a rest.
Hey, Aaron, we're making you unpack that whole thing.
Oh, that's only one. I got two of them. One for food and one for
one
four
for
people.
Unpacking. Take it away, Jim.
All right. So people and animals first. Okay. So living things, not including your plants. Living things, important. Okay. So if you don't have a plan for how to get people and animals out of the disaster zone or the impending disaster, you need to start thinking about that yesterday. Okay. A grab and go bag is critical and essential. That's the thing that you put those documents in. Copies of them. You don't bring your original passport, bring a copy of it. You can bring your original, I don't care. But think about what goes in that bag. What do you need? How many people take prescription medication that is life critical? Blood pressure medication is life critical. Diabetic medication is life critical, and many others. So think about you and your family. And if you're really nice, you'll think about your neighbors about what they need and help them prepare, which is what I do. Valley Way in Antioch, California is almost fully prepared because of me. I go knock on doors and talk to people and nag them about this stuff. So that go bag has to have that stuff in there. And it's not something you put together 5 minutes before you got to bolt out the door. It's something you have ready in a closet, by your front door, wherever you're going to put it. I don't care. But make sure everybody knows where it is and what to grab. Every family member in my house has their own bag because we may get disconnected. I'll give a break for the repeater again. All right, so here we are. We're all either ham radio operators or we're interested in it. That's why we're here on this net. So now it comes to the crux of the matter. Maintaining a communication method or methods. How, if you get separated, or even if you go to the same location to get away from whatever you need to evacuate from, how are you going to communicate? How are you going to communicate to your family? How are you going to communicate to your neighbors, to your friends, or whatever else? While everybody depends on their little cell phone or big cell phone that fills up their pocket, it's nice to have that, but the reality is those things die. And the reality is that in these disasters, cell phone towers burn up in fires. They get flooded by hurricanes. They get wiped out by tornadoes. The list goes on. The reality is you need to have a radio, preferably an amateur radio. But if you have GMRS or FRS or ABC or 123, whatever acronym it is, that's better than nothing. So if you don't have an amateur radio license, I strongly urge you to get one. If you've got one, you better make sure that everybody's go bag has a radio, an extra battery, a charger, and that you're charging those batteries regularly. My house looks like a big battery charging house. So keep in mind, you have to maintain communication. You cannot be in a black hole of communications during this disaster. Most of these disasters last a very long time. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or longer, depending on what has happened. So I want you to take those things seriously, because if you don't have that, you're going to fail. You're going to fail in your preparations. You're going to fail in your response to the emergency that you have to respond to. And I don't mean being a first responder. I mean getting the heck out of Dodge. Some other items I suggest that you might want to think about: keys to your house or your vehicle, depending on the disaster. I don't know where you live. You know, you might be in London and might be worried about the Thames flooding over. And if you don't know about that, you need to Google that. It's a serious thing. It's a big deal. It's a serious risk out there. Warm clothing and a jacket. Well, wait a second, Jim. It's summer here in Northern California. It's hotter than Hades. It gets cold at night. And if you live near a desert area, or depending on where you evacuate to, it could get quite chilly. So you should always have at least a shell of a jacket, but a jacket and some warm clothing in that go bag. If you have a laptop and you have electronic copies of your documents and important records, then bring that with you. Make sure you bring the charger, okay? Cash, credit cards, and other forms of payment. If you look back at the Camp Fire, which is the big one that burned up Paradise and Magali, California, which was a huge fire. I don't know how many people died. It's really irrelevant. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of those people were camped out in homeless style camps for weeks. Weeks. FEMA was there, but it takes a long time to process you. Okay? People were parked in parking lots and everywhere else. Repeater break. And lastly, if you've got more time and you don't get the 2-minute knock, which most of the time you don't, but it did happen because some of these wildfires move rather fast when it's windy or it's coming, up a hill or down a hill. So it's possible. But if you don't live there, if you live in Florida, you don't worry about wildfires. It's too dang wet. You worry about hurricanes and tornadoes. That's your thing out there, right? So if you know a hurricane is kind of stewing out there in the Atlantic, or if you're on the west coast of Florida, west coast, Florida has a west coast, by the way, just in case you didn't know. But if there's something stewing there in the Gulf and it might come over there and hit Pensacola on the west coast, and you got kids, grab some toys and some games, something to keep them busy. Because if you've had to ever evacuate, it's not an easy thing, and it gets very boring in a microsecond. So a few mementos is another thing. Some pictures, jewelry, whatever is valuable to you that's physical. Take that stuff with you, okay? Because you may not come back to having any of that stuff. And if that stuff's that important, you need to grab it. Keepsakes or whatever. Another thing is, besides water, which everybody, well, if you don't know the rule of threes, you got 3 minutes of oxygen before you're dead, 3 days of water before you're dead, 3 weeks of food before you're dead, except for me. I can live off the fat of the land for 4 weeks. So, there's that. But the reality is, you got to be prepared for that stuff and either pack it in your car or have it in a bag or a box that you can take with you. I'm going to give one last break and then I'll shut up.
Good.
So how do you know these things are coming for you? You don't. But there are things before all of the technology fails, because it will. I guarantee it. I promise you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the technology will fail. There are emergency alerts. You can listen to radios. You can listen to, there's websites that you can subscribe to. And wherever, I don't know where you live, so I'm not going to say go here, go there. But FEMA.gov is a good site. Ready.gov, which is run by FEMA, is a good website. READY.gov. Go there. There is all sorts of stuff about planning for all sorts of disasters. And you can pick and choose whatever disaster happens around you. So in California, where I live, earthquakes, tsunamis, and wildfires. I don't worry about hurricanes. They don't really happen here. Tsunamis, definitely a big deal. I am 48 miles from the actual Pacific coast, but tsunamis definitely have penetrated the San Francisco Bay Area. The 2010 Japan earthquake and resulted tsunami made it all the way through the Golden Gate and into Berkeley and destroyed a pier. Through the Golden Gate, if you go to Google Maps and look how big the Golden Gate is, it's small. That tsunami made it all the way through. So the reality is, you need to understand where you live, what the threats are, and make sure that you're in tune with the authorities as well as other avenues for understanding what's coming down the road. You don't want the 2-minute knock. You want to be fully prepared and be leaving the area right when they say that they recommend evacuation instead of mandate. If they recommend it, get the heck out. It's not worth it to stick around. You don't want to, I forget the guy's name. You don't want to be the ding dong that sat up there on Mount St. Helens, like, I'm not leaving my property no matter what. He was drinking lava and mud. He died up there because he didn't want to leave. And maybe that was okay for him. But most people, it's not. So I want you to think carefully and thoughtfully. Subscribe to all the services that advise you of disasters and emergencies, and be ready. I don't want to hear about any of you being on some list of people that didn't make it. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to your family. You owe it to your community. And I'll be selfish and say you owe it to me. Thank you very much.
Awesome, Jim. I appreciate the input. Yeah, there's a ton of helpful hints in there. I mean, honestly, the biggest thing I think is just communicating with your family and practicing and having a plan in place, so that it's not something where when you hear this or when something happens, you immediately start panicking and you go into this mode where, oh, I don't know what to do. If you have that thought out in your head before something happens, you're going to be a lot better off. One thing that you had touched on a little bit, but I'm going to turn over to Servando to talk a little bit about, is what you do when you are in a situation where you're not near your family, and how do you communicate with them, and how do you set something up to where you guys can get back and get reunited with each other in case of a disaster. So I'll pass it over to Servando. Take it away.
Servando here, K6 SRV. Almost forgot my call sign. So your emergency gathering place, when disaster strikes, it's helpful to know that you can gather with others at a temporary physical location. So for help with your needs or the help of their needs, for information, moral support, or even when it's not necessary to evacuate. So there's comfort in knowing that others nearby understand what you're going through and might be able to vocalize what you yourself are thinking. So depending on the situation, it might not always be practical or even possible for a group of people to gather at one specific location, but if it is, you should. Of course, that opens up a lot of questions like where you should gather, where to go if your meeting place is no longer accessible, and who determines all of that. I'm going to drop for a little bit. So predetermined gathering place, to keep things simple, you should have a place to go to gather near your home and another near your workplace or school. So this is kind of weird, and you'll know what's practical for you, right? I work in the trades. Sometimes I'm working 25 miles from home, and like right now I'm working 86 miles away from home. So you got to have a game plan for that and tailor it to your needs if you're crazy like me. So for your home location, approach somebody in a neighborhood leadership position, such as your bishop, if you're LDS, or your association if you live in an HOA. So ask them where you can gather during an emergency. Many will never have even thought of it until you bring it up, honestly, especially your HOA. So if neither of these apply to your situation, you take the leadership role, designate a reasonable gathering place, and inform those in your neighborhood. So those that you care about, right? You're not going to go around door to door, hey, have you thought about an emergency evacuation plan? That's kind of creepy. So choose your people. So the block caption program, what is that? Is that caption, Nick?
I don't know.
Okay, so this block program, I'm going to say block captain program provides some suggestions for grouping, but they're primarily for the accounting of people, and they tend to favor sheltering in place rather than gathering as neighbors.
Oh, the block captain program.
Yeah.
So
that's
like a
right. That's
leader
what
of
that
your
was.
block, a leader of, the kind of like what Jim said, where he basically forced everybody into compliance, that sort of thing.
Gotcha.
VBR dropped again.
Back to you.
I'm gonna drop for a little bit. Let VBR get back to its paces.
Its former self.
Yeah.
All right,
So-
you're good to go.
So approach your employer or your school official and ask about, an emergency evacuation plan, including like an outside location where people can gather. Most employers will have like a cookie cutter evacuation plan for their building, but they may not have something, you might spark something. You might actually get some people to like start thinking about a more serious situation, but it's good to ask, because if they don't have a plan, then you might spark, might get them to come up with a plan. And you might be surprised, they might actually have like a really kick-ass plan. You never know. So an unplanned place to gather, some situations require some quick thinking and a little pre-planning on your part, such as when you're shopping or traveling. So when a disaster strikes, it might be up to you to designate a safe place to gather. So people will find a little peace of mind knowing that somebody has taken the initiative to do something for their safety. So if another person steps up and devises a plan or location different from the one that you've proposed, unless it's clearly dangerous, use your leadership skills in a different way by supporting the other person instead of insisting that your way is the right way or the only way to do things. So the last thing you want to do is to create any animosity during a high stress situation or anything, just better to play along, get along, or however that goes. I'm gonna drop for a little bit. So this brings up like making a contingency plan, right? In the event that your primary home, work, or school gathering place becomes inaccessible for one reason or another, it's often wise to ask about or pursue a secondary meeting location. So down tree limbs or power lines, broken up roads, flooded landscapes, even pathways that have been barricaded for emergency vehicles, like that's very common. Like we see that that last great fire that we had in Vacaville, there were certain streets you couldn't even go down them because they were for fire only. So you don't know where that's gonna, unless you have a scanner or something. But I mean, most people don't have that capability. I'm gonna drop for a little bit. Perfect. So this might prevent you. So these type of obstructions might prevent you or your neighbors from collecting or meeting up at your predetermined meeting place. So that's why it's important to have a contingency, a backup, and maybe even a backup for a backup. But you guys all need to be in cahoots. You guys got to know it. So have a plan B in mind just in case. What to take with you? First of all, call Jim. He'll tell you exactly what you're going to need. So keeping in mind that this gathering place is temporary, but somewhat close to home or work or school, there are a few things that you may want to, you might want with you, but you don't want to go overboard either, because I mean, you could pack too much. I mean, here are some ideas: smartphone, keys to your home, vehicle are assumed. I mean, Jim just went over how a smartphone might not be. A smartphone will turn into a dumb phone real fast, especially if you don't have like solar power or battery packs or any kind of way of charging up that phone. You're gonna be SOL. So you might want to think about, actually a good idea is to have like a solar panel that'll recharge a battery pack or something, so you can recharge a radio and your smartphone. So your grab and go bag, which might include like bandages, water, toilet paper, flashlight, lighter, headlamp, and batteries. Warm clothing and jacket. Jim touched up on this, how it's important to pack layers. It gets cold out here at night. So he's right about that. But it depends on where you live. I mean, you're gonna know what you're gonna need as far as like clothing, depending on where you live. So a laptop with important documents and passwords, your handheld radio programmed with important frequencies such as your area frequency, your city frequency, local Aries frequency, the most popular local repeater frequency, those are important to have in there. If you don't already have them in there, most people won't have like the Aries, but it's good to have those programmed in your radio. If you have the time and luxury, toys and games for the little ones, mementos such as photographs, jewelry, and sentimental keepsakes, and snacks to hold you over for a while. I would pack, I would have freeze dried, or like MREs. They sell those, the Big Mountain or whatever they're called. They have those at Big Five. Those are super cheap, and it's good to chuck that in a bag somewhere. Keep those in a bag. I'm gonna drop for a little bit.
Go ahead, Servando.
And that's pretty much it. I mean, yeah, I'm curious to see what the tens of viewers we have listening have to say or to add to this. Me personally, it's since I travel so far away for work, it's good to have a plan as to like if X, Y, or Z happens, do this. If obviously my family's not gonna expect me to come home right away. So you gotta tailor your plan specific to how you live your lifestyle and everything. So, but the most important thing is to have a plan, and then to go over it a little bit. If you train like shit, you're gonna act like shit. So, if you can talk about it all day long, but if you don't dry fire it, it's gonna fall apart quick. So that's all I got. K6 SRV.
All right, Servando, thank you. You had a couple people in the chat talking, and I saw that Aaron posted www.alertwildfire.org. I don't know, is that or org? Oh, org. It just popped over to the bottom of my screen. That's a good source. I haven't actually ever pulled that up, so why don't we do this?
They've got good webcams of the location that you may be in.
I'm gonna pull this up while we're on, and I'll just share it real quick so that everybody can see it. And for those of you that are on coming in through a digital mode or on RF, we're at alertwildfire.org. And basically what it looks like is this site, it just gives you sort of a snapshot from different locations around the area. What do these different tabs do, Aaron?
You gotta go. There's a beta site that'll allow you to go do the drop down. You can do the webcams and check out different repeater sites have different cameras. PG&E's got cameras as an example, and you can check out conditions.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, and you can see here this is like a view of the mountain range near Shasta, and it even shows that there's some smoke in the area settling in. So, great source of information if you're in or around an area that has video footage. You can use that to kind of keep yourself more prepared or informed in the event of a wildfire-related disaster. So good info. Thanks for that. This is Nick, KN6DAL. I wanted to just take a second and see if anybody out there on the repeaters or connected to any digital mode wanted to chime in if you had anything related to the topic, or if you just wanted to say hi. Come on in now.
Hey, Nick, can I butt in for the stream? I'm going to pop a link in chat to a YouTube video. One of those alert wildfire cameras are actually at my radio site. They're on my 900 antenna mast. I'll pop a link in chat of a 12-hour time lapse from last year. I'm sure everybody in California remembers the day that we were inside of a pumpkin, and I pulled that off of the camera and made a time lapse of it, put it up on my YouTube. So I'll throw that link into the chat right now.
Yeah, perfect.
Just to show people.
All right, nothing being heard. I did want to take a second to pass it to anybody in the coordination group here. Greg or Aaron or Bert, anybody wanted to jump on and maybe give your opinion on the topic or have anything you wanted to add? Come on in.
Bert, you got anything for me?
Oh, let's see. I wanted to know, how do you find the Aries frequencies, like your local Aries frequencies? N6 EFR.
I've got one. If you go to, it's not the most reliable, but NARC or Repeater Book, you can actually sort by Aries Racy's emergency communications, and you can find local simplex as well as repeated frequencies, and it's a pretty useful thing to have on hand. I have a printout. You can get in contact with whoever runs your county communications, and I'm sure they'll provide you with a list of ham frequencies that, because most people in disasters, regardless of if you're a ham or a commercial, you probably have that type of list, especially in the emergency world. And you probably can get them, like I know in San Mateo County, it's not public, but if you get in contact with the right people, you can actually get that information, and it's a spreadsheet, and I keep it printed out on my clipboard inside my bag. And I actually do have one thing that I would recommend in a grab-and-go kit if I could. I'm going to take that as a yes that I can go. One thing I would recommend is obviously everybody has a first aid kit. One of the best things to have inside of that first aid kit is like it gets nasty after a while, but like mint gum, right? Because you can use things like mint gum. Sunflower seeds are another good one, but I really like mint gum. If you're treating somebody for an injury or your kid or whatever, it's actually funny that mint gum will kind of take their brain off of what is going on, like their panic, and I've seen it very often. Just a normal pack of gum, throw it in your bag inside the plastic wrap, and in that type of situation, you can take it out, give it to somebody you're rendering aid to. It'll take their mind off the pain. It's just, it really helps. And then for a little kid who's freaking out, you give them mint gum or a candy or something, and it really calms them down. Another really big thing that everybody should have in their bag, and I'm going to let the repeater drop because this is one that I don't think anyone said yet, so go ahead and drop, Nick. Whenever you're ready. Okay, so another big one is go to Harbor Freight, Home Depot, whatever, buy yourself, maybe your family, buy a helmet. Not a bicycle helmet, buy some type of brain bucket. If you are trying to get out on foot, say you can't leave in your vehicle and you've got to go under trees and you maybe pass by some downtown buildings, get a helmet, because not only do you have that helmet for your safety, but if you do need to go help somebody, it's a very important thing to have, because your brain is probably the most important part of everything you do, and if you don't have that brain secured, you're going to have a really tough time. So a helmet, and another big one is a high visibility, cheapo high visibility vest. Doesn't have to say anything, just a bright green or orange one. And yeah, it's definitely, those are three big things you really should have, including the basic first aid supplies.
About some work gloves.
Yeah, work gloves are another big one. I have a whole list if you want me to go into it that are some really good ones that I don't think were covered before.
Sheepskin.
I can go into it if you want to go into it. I'll go into
Sheepskin
it.
Copy that, Connor. Connor, you got it going, man. You definitely got it going. That's good stuff, and it's far away from bare bones stuff, but it's important. You're right.
Yeah.
This is Nick KN60AL. I am going to post a link here in Zoom for Zoom in the chat in just a minute. If anybody wants to jump in and say hi, you're welcome to, and we'll get that set up here in just a few moments. But I did want to. I had a question for Aaron real quick. On that go bag, or I don't know if it was a go bag, but that bag that you showed right in the beginning. What's in that? What all's packed in that thing?
Well, W6AEF. Let me turn off my background video here. So got 4 folks in the family. This right here is a Maxpedition bag. Big little Molly attachments. We have stuff to boil water in here. We've got a little document pouch. Get a laminator. Thank you to the tech prepper who sold me on the laminator. But this is just clothes. clothes, blankets, stuff to get out. And then I've got this for the dogs. They got their own gear here. And then this is food, medicine, and toilet paper and water. So between those 3 pieces, we're out of here. And I got a separate little bag for radios, but that's what's in there.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that.
Hey, one more thing, Nick. If we have to let it drop, let it drop here. But I got one more thing.
1 second. All right, KN6DAL to W6AEF. Take it away.
All right. Hey, thanks, Nick. So, I keep it, what is it? KISS, keep it simple, stupid, right? So whatever vehicle you have, you don't have to have a truck or 4-wheel drive, but a lot of the stuff you can keep in your car too, right? So I don't have any duplication. I've got stuff in my car, first aid in my car, things that I might need. So, it pares down some of the stuff that you have to keep in order to grab and go. Now, if you have to roll out on foot, that's maybe a different story, but just think about all the places you're going to kind of keep it, whether it's your vehicle or in a bag. And, for some of us, it's very cyclical in the time of year on when we're going to need this stuff and kind of where you have it ready. But a lot of good stuff between Servando and Jim. Thank you guys. You guys are very thorough. Connor as well. That's really thorough and important stuff. Some of that stuff we don't even think about. So, good job. That's all I got, Nick. W6AEF.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. This is Nick, KN6DAL. I'll take another call out, see if there's anybody else out on the repeaters or any digital connections that wants to come in and just say hi. KN6DAL, come on in and tell us what you think.
Looks like that guy died. Hey,
all right,
sorry.
nothing.
I think Greg has something to say.
Yeah, Greg.
Sorry,
KN6KAE, did you want to take the floor for a minute?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. KN6DAL. This is KN6KIE. The one thing that I like to keep in my car for emergency purposes, and I'm not saying that this is necessarily like a bug out bag, but I like to keep an old camera, like an old camera in the back of my car. A flashlight, obviously, some basic stuff, but an old camera. An old camera seems to be, if your phone's not working, if you want to snap a picture, if you have to take a picture of, stuff that's happening around you at the time. I find like something like that is really useful to just kind of a CYA kind of situation. Other than that, I mean, everybody's just covered so much, from like rations to blankets to fleshlights, I mean, there's, life straws as well. So, but that's one thing that I haven't really heard tonight that I like to keep, other than like a gun. I think that a camera or something like that would be really useful in your car. Back to you. This is KN6KIE.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. KN6DAL here. So I posted the link in the chat to Zoom. Anybody is free to jump in and say hi. I'm going to go ahead and take a second and shut down the repeaters here and return everything to normal operation. And if anybody wants to join us in Zoom, you're welcome to. We'll be sticking around here for a little bit and see what the conversation stirs up. So appreciate everybody coming down tonight, and thanks again. We will see everybody next week. This is KN6DAL with the 2-meter crew anti-net saying 7-3 to all the digital connections, and we will see you over in Zoom. Oh, and we got the big old wave. That was nice.
Probably smart that I didn't go grab my SAR bag, man, because I would have. I mean, Nick, you saw what Nick saw what
that would have been cool.
In the back of the car.
That would have been cool. You should have jumped in the 400 times I asked in the coordinator group if somebody wanted to say something.
Well, no, I did jump in, but I could have gone into it. I could have grabbed the gear. I've got like I don't know if you read the chat, but I've got all the medical needs, so everything for a paramedic other than portable IV drip and injection medications.
See, that's cool. And honestly,
and then I've got a cardiac bag as well as an O2 bag. So.
I wish I had more in the terms of medical gear, because I mean I've got like your kind of primary first aid kit, that kind of thing, but nothing. I would like to be able. I would like to do oxygen. I'd like to get certified in oxygen.
That's the biggest thing.
It's all about training.
That's the biggest thing. So you can actually get it's kind of like I think everybody kind of knows. Okay, so hopefully everybody knows CPR, right? But you can actually get in trouble for providing CPR without being CPR certified. There's a lot of things that you can do. Like, for example, you know, as an EMT, you cannot administer a lot of things, but as a paramedic, you can. There's a lot of different, like, you know, with your levels of your emergency medical training, you know, you have your BLS, your ALS, your EMT, and your paramedic, and then your, you know, your doctor, nurse, whatever, right? There's different steps of what you can do, and you can actually get in trouble for it. Now, in a disaster situation, you know, I guess when on the air, I don't give a shit if someone's dying. I'm gonna help them, and if I don't know how to do it, I'm gonna find someone who knows how to do it. My dad was a paramedic for 13 years, and there's been a lot of things that my dad and I have done, stopping on the side of the road for somebody getting hit by a motorcycle, getting hit by a car, flung, you know, 200 feet. And my dad and I just hopped into action because, you know, 13 years as a paramedic, and then my experience, we were able to work on somebody, and we just did not give a shit. If you're dying and you need help, you do it. And kind of like Servando said, get your shit together and know it before you do it, because if you don't know shit, you can't do shit. Simple as that. So, and it's best to have your certifications for the simple things, you know.
Connor,
and as a ham, it's great. Yeah.
Connor, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're not certified, if you're not CPR certified, you're covered under the Good Samaritan law. But if you are certified in CPR, you can get in trouble because they can say that you didn't do it right.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
if you don't know shit,
you know what? That's the thing about CPR, though. I've taken classes. The expectation is that you're cracking ribs. You're cracking ribs.
Yeah,
man.
so
breaking ribs.
You're supposed to,
Yeah,
dude.
you're breaking them. You're breaking them.
True story. I performed CPR on someone for an hour and a half before medics got there. The motherfucker died, dude. His ribs will crack. They crack.
Oh, yeah. You know, a really big one. A really big one is like paramedics, but so paramedics can do this, but EMTs can't. Putting a crank in and a chest tube, they cannot do that. EMTs can't do that. Paramedics can. And the biggest issue is when EMTs are going through paramedic training, or they've already gone through it, they just haven't gotten their actual paper certification, and they, you know, provide that care or do that, you know, do that operation, whatever you want to call it. That's where you get in trouble. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. If you do it wrong, someone can sue you. I mean, it's the same thing as nowadays they tell you not to put
it's your
rubbing
damned
alcohol
if you do, or you're
directly
damned if you don't, man.
The biggest one right now is like what I've heard a lot of is people like, don't put rubbing alcohol on skin. Rubbing alcohol, we know it's a sterilizing fluid, and the biggest problem is everybody complains about, like, you know, oh, it dries up the patient's skin. It's like, well, you know what? If they need it, I think the last thing you should be worrying about is their skin getting a little bit dry. You know what I mean?
You just need to add the extra step. You need to add some moisturizer, man.
I don't think anybody will complain about that nowadays.
Aloe vera.
So let me interject. Kilo Alpha 3 Victor Delta X EMT or X paramedic. Why don't you chime in on this? Because we got somebody here been there, done that. So KA3 BDT, give us your input, man.
So yeah, I was a volunteer in Maryland, and shock trauma in Maryland started EMT program back in the day. I was at a volunteer rescue squad right in between Baltimore and Washington. So it's like 3 heavy-duty corridors of you know, freeways. And but yeah, I left when I came here to California in '97. But I've heard recently it's like the regulations are just out of control. You know, like so many people, especially volunteers, they're leaving just because it's too much stuff, too many rules, and that's a big problem.
And I deal in risk all day long. My whole job at UC Davis Medical Center has to do with risk, and that's exactly what you're talking about there, bud. Is the risk is too high, and it's pretty sad when the risk gets too high to save a person's life. That's really what it boils down to. If you're sitting there going, what should I do? Then that's a big problem. And it's not just California. There's a lot of other states that also are dangerous, but California is well known as the high level litigious state. You're going to get sued, if you look the wrong way, if you wear the wrong colored shirt or whatever. So it's a tough thing to do.
A really good thing that is like a rule of thumb, at least for me, is and I have this every day pretty much, other than when I'm like going to get food, and when I'm in my BDUs and I go to uniform and I go to meetings, and anytime I'm in uniform, I have my green book. Everybody that's in wildland firefighting knows exactly what I'm talking about. You have your green book with you, your ICS green book, and that even has, you go to the certain medical section, you can see, okay, this is what an EMT can and can't do. Paramedic can and can't do, and you can flip it, and then you have all your interoperability and incident command systems, and it's all part of training that you have to take anyways for ICS. So it's scary what you can do to save someone's life, and you could feel great about it, and next thing you know, you have a lawsuit because you cracked someone's rib during CPR, and you're just like,
well, in that vein, I was actually told that if you have a CPR certification and you refuse to perform a life-saving procedure because you're certified, you can actually get in trouble to that. Is there any truth to that?
Risk management. I think
Right.
Jim just kind of summed it up. What happens if you got certified, but let's say that your instructor was kind of lax. Now that's not common. They're super on you about doing it the right way. But let's say you have an instructor that's very lax, right? And you kind of don't feel comfortable, or you never were taught, staying alive, and doing that beat, and you just don't feel comfortable doing it, and you're like, hey, I've got the certification, but I don't feel comfortable doing it. It's risk management. So I guess the biggest rule of thumb is never do something that you have never done before or don't feel comfortable doing. Or if you're not willing to do it on yourself, don't do it on someone else. Pretty much is, I guess, the easiest way to look at it.
Yeah, and that's good feedback. I'll give you an example, real life example. Happened to me. So it was in 2014, I think, May of 2014, April. I come around the corner coming home from a Veterans Resource Center meeting. I was an executive director of Veterans Resource Center in Antioch, California. I was coming home, came around the corner, happened upon this fella that was under a couple of redwood trees up off the side of the road. One of those little mini micro rocket bike things, whatever the hell they're called, was sitting tilted up against the curb. So I figured he crashed or wiped out or hurt himself, and he was just laying up there. So I pull over, I pull my medical kit out, I pull out, my radio, I get my gloves on, and I start kind of jogging over. Neighbors come out and they say, oh, how many shots did you hear? I don't know. I think it was 7. It might have been 10. I don't know. So these people come out, and I'm like, I stop in my tracks. I'm like, is this an active shooting scenario, or the shooter's gone? They said, no, they're left. And I said, you call 911. And I point to somebody, which is one of the most important things to do, is you need to assign accountability and responsibility to somebody to do stuff. I was going to go take care of this dude that now I find out had been shot up. So they're like, I don't have my cell phone. Such a nuisance. So, and I'm joking about it, but this is exactly how it happened. I'm not kidding you. So I run to the kid. He's 16 years old. I find out later. So I look at him, and in my past experiences, I know what a dead person looks like. I know what it looks like when they've punched out completely. I knew he had punched out. His buddy comes running around the corner. Oh my God, fat boy, what's wrong, man? What happened to you? Little gangbanger, punk ass little twerp. He got himself shot up because he went to the wrong park to sell dope. So I call 911 because I'm a responsible human being. I have my cell phone at all times because, well, don't we all? I call 911. I call Antioch PD. Antioch PD answers the phone. And I said, I've got a shooting victim here, Country Hills and Valley Way. He doesn't look good. I didn't want to say he's dead because that's not my job. He doesn't look good. She goes, are you applying CPR? I said, well, I just inspected him. He's got a round right through his sternum. I'm probably not going to do CPR. So you're not going to do CPR. This is the dispatcher for Antioch Police Department. You're not going to do CPR. I was like, sweetheart, if you want me to shred the rest of his organs, fine. I'll do it. I'm not stupid. I've been there, done that, been around the corner. I'm not doing it. She's like, okay, so you're acknowledging you are not doing CPR. I'm like, what's more important to you? Getting the fucking PD over here, pardon my language, getting the fucking PD out here to investigate and pick up the shell casings and stuff like that, or me not doing CPR on this dead kid? She's like, okay, whatever. And, I hear sirens light up and they all show up. And then they tell everybody to leave, which, of course, Connor, I think you would understand this more than anybody else. That's the dumbest thing to do ever. Everybody to leave? I was like, yeah. So I sat on my trunk of my car and waited. Cops never came and talked to me. I went and talked to them, told them what I knew. It wasn't much. He was just stupid kid, wrong place, wrong time, wrong park, selling dope. It was a gang thing, it turns out. They still don't know who did it. I don't know who did it, but I know what gangs were involved. And, I'm just not going to, it's one of those things. It's like, I know the risk and the reward of doing certain things. Doing CPR on that guy was not going to gain me anything. It was not going to bring him back to life. He was toast. He had a 9mm round through his sternum, right here, right there.
And with 911, I definitely understand that for sure.
Yeah.
Regardless of if it's medical, if it's law, whatever.
Totally.
You want to listen to the dispatcher, but if you know your terminology correctly, and if you get on, you say, hey, GSW patient 1 to the chest, possible 10-5-5, need medics code 3 as well as PD code 3. They'll go, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. Okay, we'll roll it. And when they hear 10-5-5, they're like, okay, yeah, this is happening now. We need to go, because 10-5-5 typically means, deceased corner case. And they'll get there. But one thing I definitely do not appreciate is the people embellishing on 911 calls, making something just to get a faster response time. I won't go into it too much on the air, but I've heard a lot of embellishment on 911 calls, and it's definitely a really big thing, because you just say what you need to. Most people think, you'll get in trouble for hanging up if you give them the information and you stay on the line if you need their assistance. But if they're going to be that way, hang up. It's not worth sitting there and getting stressed out even more in that type of in the moment situation, especially with that. Like I've got one really quickly. I was with my dad, like I was talking about. Motorcyclist got hit from a hit and run on a stolen vehicle, and we started to do the head to toe. Called 911. I called 911. I told them exactly what was going on. I gave them in terms, so they knew exactly, okay, this guy is not, I don't need to, hold this kid's hand going through this situation. And I hung up, and I hear somebody else across the street, one of the, I guess she's a Good Samaritans, who pulled over to help, and he's trying to sit there and give a third person perspective on what to do. And he's trying to say, well, there's 2 people over there, a father and son helping him out right now. And you can hear the dispatcher on the speakerphone just drilling this dude. And it's like, well, we're over here trying to tell people, big 18-wheelers, because this was on I-9 or I-5. I think it was on I-5 off of a off-ramp. I was just switching drivers with my dad because I just got my permit. and that's when we saw it. And I'm trying to tell truckers, no, no, don't go that way. And it was just yeah, it's a really big thing, and the fire shows up on scene. The dude was fine. Turns out our families know each other, even though he's from the Fresno area. We all kind of knew each other, which was really cool. But and he turned out fine. They life flighted him. We got him loaded onto a stretcher. Took him out to the life flight. They shut down the freeway, put the helo down there, loaded him, sent him out to 5 miles away in a life flight. And cleared the scene, and it's an experience. But if you can help when you can, as long as you know what you're doing, I would encourage it. And most people wouldn't. Most people much rather drive by a scene of an accident, and I'm not saying a little fender bender. I mean, like, people will witness like what I saw and just drive right by it. They won't do anything. I've got a lot of not great, but I've got a lot of stories about that specifically that I've seen, and I'm like, hey, you, 911 now. They're like, huh? And they're recording on their phone. I'm like, 911. And I'm like, okay, Jesus, I'll just do it. Pull my phone out. I'm on the phone with 911, trying to explain the situation. I've got a radio blasting already, trying to, I've got my dad who's a block away running to me. For a dumpster fire near a bunch of housing, and there's trees over the dumpster. So I was like, okay. I look at the situation. Yep, that all's gonna go. That 5 minutes, that's gone. That's all. Right. That's all up. It's kind of a crappy situation, and there's also ones you can't really do much about. And I know Nick sent a really good picture of that fire that was just starting to start off. Did you do anything about it, Nick? And I'm not throwing you any shade. I'm just saying, like, certain situations, there's really nothing you can do. Like, yeah, you can call and spot it, but
yeah. So that particular fire, I think it might actually still be going, or it's migrated at this point.
That's the one that's going right now.
I was there long after they knew about it. So it was already being the tankers were already flying. I mean, they had the big tanker. They were really trying to kill that thing. But probably to no avail there. That's
the one that's still ripping.
Yeah, so those fires in your guys' area, and I mean, I lived down there for a while, so I know full and well the situation at hand. The forests in that area are so dry that once things start, it's just really, really hard to even slow the fire down, let alone stop it. And it's funny that you brought that picture up, because when we were up there, to get a perspective, we had a perfect view of just the whole situation, and you could see every 20 minutes that tanker was fully loaded. I mean, it took longer than that, but I mean, that thing's flying clear out of that base over there north of Sacramento, right? That's where that thing lands, fuels up, and then or gets its retardant and then goes out and drops it, and it's just hauling butt, going back and forth. We were up there on our way back down the hill, saw it like 3 times making drops, and there was nothing that we could do at that point other than I was kind of timing whether I should stay a night or just go home, and I decided just to drive home because I didn't know what I-5 was going to look like the next day. But we do have we've got a guy, Zach, here, who just joined our Zoom, and he had made a comment in the chat on YouTube about a time where he actually got evacuated from his apartment. I was hoping maybe you could jump on there, Zach, and tell us a little bit about that. Are you a ham operator? You have a call sign?
Yes. Let me try and get a light on. Sorry, I just had to sneak out. My 8-month-old daughter just fell asleep, and I'm trying to be quiet about it. But I do have a call sign.
We understand.
Okay. You can see me all right.
Yep, there you go.
I have a technician class license. Hi, everyone. Kilo Mike 6 uniform, Quebec is my call sign. We were evacuated, I think, August 19th of last summer. I forget the name of the fire. Originally, they had said that it was caused by lightning storms. And come to find out, it was due to a double homicide. Oh, my light just went out. I guess I got to replace the bulb. That being said, that night, I work night shift, and I guess it's back on. Okay, I work night shift, so I had trouble sleeping that night, and it was serendipitous. I was listening to the police frequencies, and I could hear the police and fire department shutting down block after block, moving toward my location. And I already had a bug out bag or go bag, ready bag, things ready to go just in case of that sort of thing. Because like you all have seen in the past, year after year, we have these fires either due to natural occurrences or PG&E or whatever the case may be. And so finally, when the police did arrive to our location, they gave 15 minutes notice. And by that time, I think we had already, so it was, I think we're already gone by the time they officially evacuated our location. So it was kind of a stretch, I guess, to say that I was per se evacuated, because I had been listening and I did have a head start. That being said, we went across town to my parents for a few hours, and then ended up getting a hotel in Woodland, which was the closest unvacated hotel. All the hotels in the nearby area were completely filled up, and that was the closest hotel we could get. So we stayed there for a night and then ended up coming back. Does anyone have questions?
I'm a little curious. So you said that you had a go bag, and it sounds like you were somewhat prepared for this kind of situation. My original question was going to be, I didn't know that you were going to mention that, and that's really cool that you did. But my original question was going to be, what do you feel like you could have done to be better prepared? But it sounds like you were fairly well prepared. But I'll still ask the same question. What do you feel like, I guess, going through this scenario firsthand? And in my opinion, I mean, 15 minutes, whether you got a head start or not, that's a pretty short amount of time to say it's time for you to completely leave. That's a adrenaline inducing type of situation to be in, especially with, well, I mean, at 8 months old with your daughter, it sounds like your wife was still pregnant.
Last summer, my wife was still pregnant. Correct. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a pretty unnerving situation right there to be in. What do you feel like, looking back at it, what's maybe the one or two things that you would do differently in a situation if that unfolded tomorrow?
I'd probably put more thought into how the pets would be moved, and probably pick a different vehicle, because the vehicles we chose, my wife owns a Camry, I own a Mitsubishi Eclipse, and they don't lend themselves to moving a lot of stuff. And so that ate up time trying to configure the car. But the big head start for me was listening to the police frequencies, listening on emergency communications, and hearing that stuff. And if it weren't for that, I would be scrambling and probably would have been forced to not take as much as I could because of that factor of time. I can't think of much else that I would do differently. I left some ammunition. I took my firearms. I took cash. This sort of topic has been interesting me for a few years now. So by the time 2020 rolled around, I had a lot of thoughts rolling around in my head, things that I have already played out and tried to prepare for an occasion like that. And I got lucky that particular night, being awake and listening to the radios and having that head start. Maybe practice a few more times to shrink that time. If I were to do it again, I'd probably try to reduce that evacuation time to 15 minutes and see how much can I move in 15 minutes time, as opposed to having a head start. Maybe I'd probably pick that if I were to do it over again and see if I can move more stuff in a shorter amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing, and I'm going to ask you a question, Connor, here in 1 second. So I do know that in the Bay Area, they're moving a lot of the all of the monitoring.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up.
Things. Okay, so in regards to that, is that same thing happening? Is that same thing happening to fire as well and EMS? And if so, is there anything that the community can do to activate to try to rebuttal that? Because ultimately we live in a world of democracy where the people still have a vote. And sometimes in a state like California, there's a lot of people, so it takes a lot of people to pool together to get a vote in or to force something to go to vote. But that's doable for almost any situation. So maybe speak to that.
So law enforcement side of things, it's a mandate by the by FEMA actually, as well as the DHS. It's happening. In the next 2 years, no scanner is going to listen to law enforcement. You have to be in a department, or you have to work in a position where you need access to their system. And I believe the only people that are going to have access to it that are not that are civilians, I guess you could say, will be schools. I feel that a lot of schools now, a lot in where I'm at, I won't say any names, but some of them do have radios that are transmit capable on the PD2 and PD3 channels. Typically, your PD2 is repeated, and then your PD3 is a simplex channel, which is typically the input of another city's PD3 or whatever. So you kind of just mix and match. So with public safety, for I gotta restrict what I say. PDs, you're not gonna be able to hear them. Simple as that.
Fire?
2 years, you're not gonna be able to hear them. I'll get to fire in a second. Medical's a wishy-washy situation right now. As on medical, you can't hear patient details, so there really is no reason to restrict or encrypt the medical traffic. It's non-essential, and all patient information is confidential and sent via their MDT. Now, not all departments or locations have that ability, so some still do relay over voice. And when it comes to fire, I have a very funny sticker on my wall here, and this is actually a company motto. I won't say a name, but fireground radios should go digital when fire hydrants go digital. When it comes to interoperability, analog, VHF, UHF is always going to be there. When you start putting, the systems in place like we have now, for interoperability, they work. Yeah. There's no reason to change them for fire. About any department in the United States can go to a very specific channel, and you can talk to everybody. It's a national interoperability. And it's really a big thing. And I guess one way you can tell is if your area is going to start turning towards that direction of restricting public access is the easiest way for most people in a commute. Look at CHP. If CHP still has their big long antennas up in the air,
they do.
You're not moving. For me, where I'm at right now, they all have them clipped down, and they're all running off their little stubby 800 antennas. So it tells you in certain areas the infrastructure's not there yet. But again, in 2 years, it's going to be a really big change mandated, and everybody's been saying it for years and years and years. Oh, they're going to restrict. But the time is now. I know a lot of people that are currently working on plans in place for their department, and it's happening regardless if anybody wants it or not. And I feel bad for people who've spent, a lot of money on scanners, or for people like Zach. Luckily he heard what was going on, right. And that's great. But you don't see a lot of fire departments closing off roads. So if your local police department, sheriff's office is closing down roads, you're not going to be able to hear them until they get to your block, and you're like, red and blue lights, okay. So you're kind of screwed there, but you always will be able to hear CAL FIRE. There's no way you can cover an entire state like that. I mean, okay, there is, but realistically, not going to happen.
It'll be years.
And it's over the billions to do that stuff. Right. The radio brands out there, commercial, Motorola, Kenwood, it's a lot of money just for a really small town. It's in the millions already. So luckily Zach, and I know a lot of people, they're able to, they use their ham radios or whatever to listen to public safety, and some of them it's life-saving, but sadly that time is coming to an end. And like I said, I feel bad for scanner people, and I feel bad for people who actually could really use that because their city doesn't have infrastructure to do rapid alerts to everybody. And when
My,
your cell phone goes down.
My workaround for the scanner issue, and that is true. That trend of phasing out analog and going digital and encrypted radio, that's a thing. I think Vacaville's already phased into that. I downloaded a police scanner app on my phone, and from that you can pinpoint which state, county, and city that you want to listen to. That was my workaround for Vacaville's police frequency. The only frequency I have access to through I just have a Baofeng, and I think the county, Solano County, has their frequency still up on that, but Vacaville Police does not. So to listen to Vacaville Police, there's a police scanner app on my iPhone that I'll listen to, and that's what gave me the head start, unfortunately.
And
now that's actually, I think, honestly gonna probably go away too, because I don't believe that's encrypted. That's just trunked. So that's just monitoring a trunk system. But once they encrypt it, it's going to be a real challenge, because not only is it almost impossible to break that encryption, it's not impossible because it's a felony.
No,
it's very illegal to do. But there will be people that do it, and I think that there will be access. It'll just be a lot less available, and you'll have to know how to get that access. So hopefully
join a volunteer fire department. That's the biggest. That's the easiest thing. Join a volunteer fire department. Not only if you have the skills, you can help people, but you'll have that. You'll have that
information access. Yeah.
Yes. Right, exactly. Right. Yeah. 2 years. It's happening. Maximum 3. And
Antioch did it 6 years ago. Antioch went encrypted 6 years ago because they were working with Alameda County. Contra Costa and Alameda County are in bed together. They did the whole digital thing. I knew the chief of police at the time, called him up on his back line and read him the riot act. I said, you are screwing us over because I have so much gang related crap over this park across the street. I can't help you. So you're going to lose a serious asset. And he didn't care. He was like, look, those guys all got scanners. They know what's going on. They're listening. I get it. Totally get it. But, the reality is, Zach, you're a lucky guy. You're lucky you had that access to, like Connor said, 2 or 3 years down the road, we're screwed, blued, and tattooed. So, anyway.
But we'll find a way to prevail. We are getting close to that 9:30 mark, so we're going to have to shut this stream down. But I do want to just say thanks to Zach for jumping in and sharing that with us.
Yeah,
it's always
thanks
cool
for having me. I love this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome in anytime. We always have different topics going on, and there's sometimes they're a little lighthearted, sometimes they're a little more serious, and you can always change the topic to whatever the heck you want midstream. So feel free to come in.
It's Burger King. You can have what you want.
You can have what you want,
bro.
And if it's not what you want, you just make it what you want. But,
all right.
Yeah, and big thanks to everybody who volunteered to help and shared some information tonight. So. With that, I'm going to say 7-3 to everybody, and we'll see everyone next week.
Yep.
All right, 73.
7-3.
Yeah, 73. Zach, thanks very much. Hey, Zach, what branch?
Air Force Reserve. I just re-enlisted